Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me David Berger. Hey, David, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Craig?
Great. So I want to start out like I normally do, sharing some photos of works of yours, give people an idea of the kind of stuff that you do. So these are in no particular order. But can you tell me, what am I looking at here?
Well, this is a portrait of my friend Linda. I don't know. I think you would remember her.
Oh yeah, I remember Linda.
And I painted her about 14 times, if I
Mhm.
remember correctly.
Is this recent?
No, this is this is actually pretty old. That's probably about more than 20 years old. God,
Okay.
that's weird to say, but
Well, I've
yeah.
always loved your quality of light, the way that you're able to get the different shades, especially on the clothing. You do an excellent job in that regard.
Thank you.
So I've always liked that. One of the questions I've always kind of been curious about, when you finish a painting, do you ever varnish? Do you ever seal it?
No, I have never ever done that. And just this past semester or the semester before, a student asked me, "Oh, I have a question about varnishing." And I never considered it. I never thought about it. I've since asked about it and I might try it. Like, of course, I'm going to do it with a painting I don't really care about. Do you know what I mean? Just in case I completely mess it up. No, I don't.
Okay. I'm just curious. A lot of artists I talk to don't do it, but there's such value in protecting it, right? But it does change the color at the same time. It's
If I think it would probably make it more true to the original because just because it looks like that when I'm painting, it's glossier and wet, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's something I've never tried, but I really do want to consider it now that I think about it.
Well, I learned that you can actually. I used to make a medium with a little linseed and damar varnish in the medium. You can
Yeah.
mix it in, so you can use it.
Oh, yeah. I used to do that too, and I stopped doing it because chemistry was never my strong point. So anything that involves, I'm serious, in terms of my painting,
Yeah.
very little chemistry as much as I can. And I usually just work with the oil paint.
Mhm.
I usually scrub it out if I need to. I destroy my brushes,
Mm.
but I scrub the paint to a thin layer. And if I use any medium, it's just the turpenoid. But I very rarely thin my paint.
Interesting.
So
So speaking of painting, this is more recent,
yes,
correct?
yes.
And these are smaller, right?
Yeah, much smaller, but at the same time, much larger than the previous work.
Okay.
There were many paintings that I did that were 6x8 or 4x6 and 6x8 and 5x7.
Okay.
And so this is, I believe, 12 by 14 inches, which is small,
Yeah.
but felt huge at the time compared to the 4x6s that I was
Are
doing.
most of your works more of a personal size?
For years, for the last, oh gosh, maybe 5 7 years, I've been doing I had to do originally the Dear Fleischer show.
Mhm.
I wanted to
Mhm.
donate to that, but I didn't want to make a piece of schlock and just say, oh, here you go. And I usually paint life size,
Mhm.
so I made very tiny paintings. I knew I wanted natural light on them, and I did one, and I can't just do one of anything. Do you know what I mean? So I did about 50, so
Nice.
that I don't know. And they feel much larger to me because, of course, my studio is so small. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So but now I've actually decided, I can't be limited by this smallness.
Mm.
So right now in the studio, the paintings are getting to be larger, 18 by 24, 22 by 30. So back to what I kind of normally did.
So you
Uh,
so you're you have a do you have a storage space in mind now? Now that you're working larger?
they are the walls of my house. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? It is the largest museum of David Berger's artwork.
Now, is that museum open on weekends or is that closed?
It's open by appointment.
That's good. So this piece I've seen before, and
Yes.
I really enjoy this. I love the quality of light that you worked on this, and I've known you a long
Thank you.
time, and I've
Yeah.
seen that quality of yours get stronger over time, or not stronger, more focused within your work.
Yeah.
So, what is there a story behind this particular picture? Is there something good that I need to know about?
There's a very funny story about it. This painting is actually very important because you are correct. It is one of the first paintings that I thought I'm going to deal with light, which is something that didn't happen until I went into graduate school when I started painting outdoors. And then, of course, everything becomes the quality of light. And that was not really present in the work. But in this work, there is a funny story too, because someone had seen a painting of mine and they said, "Oh, I liked your work better when you dealt with color." And I don't know why, but my sense of revenge is pretty stupid. So I thought, oh my God, people don't think David Berger knows how to handle color. You know,
Right.
literally, that was the impetus for me to put together a still life that had yellow, red, green. And the lamp was just not meant to be lit, but the still life didn't look good no matter what I did until I turned on that light. And then it became a challenge of how am I going to do that?
Yeah. Do you ever title your pictures?
I do, but they are really some of them have titles where from the sources, you know, that I put on there, and some of them don't when I get lazy. But my titles are basically grocery lists. So I thought about this because and I thought of it, and I don't remember what I called it to begin with, but it would have been something very banal, like a grocery list. It might have been still life with lamp or something like that. Do you know?
Well, that was such a fantastic story. I thought maybe this piece was going to be called, like,
revenge.
Yeah, right. I can do color. Screw you, kind of a
Well, my revenge always backfires because my idea of getting back at people is like they love it, you know.
So finally, this piece really caught my eye. Not only do you have the quality of light, but the idea of the foreground, middle ground, background, the shadow and the window. There's a lot going on here. Do you find that do you find your work getting more complicated as you grow as an artist?
I don't know. I feel like it's always been complicated. I have a horror vacui. I know that I have it. Do you know what I mean? If there's an empty space, there's something going to be there. I paint up to the very edge of my picture. So sometimes that annoys people that, you know, it's like, oh my God, could you put an inch more space? And I'll just paint that inch as, you know, complicated and considered as everything else. I've always thought it's more complicated, but I think maybe now it's I think it has gotten a little bit more complicated because I want everything now. I want foreground, I want middle ground, I want background, I want texture, I want pattern, I want it all. And the trick is knowing when to stop, and oftentimes it means undoing something I've done or obscuring something I've done, which is fine. You know?
When I first came across your work, you know, when we were in school together, I had always sort of equated some of your work with like Lucian Freud, sort of his brushstroke that you had. But you, over the years, you have changed out of that, and it's been wonderful to see this trail that you've blazed forward. Because I think there's a lot more in these pictures now that reveal themselves slowly. You didn't always have that, and now you do. Like even in this one, I'm starting to see the reflections of the light hitting the bowl that then go back on the fruit, that little bit of yellow that's under there. Weren't that subtle before, and it's wonderful to see that kind of stuff. Speaking of subtle, this is a final piece that I picked, and I really I love the yellow. The yellow is just fantastic.
Yellow is my favorite color. So
is it?
Well, it's not my favorite color. I have to say, you can't have, like Van Gogh said, you can't have yellow without blue. It's yellow and turquoise. Do you know what I mean? Are my favorites. And so anyway, I love this little painting. It makes me very happy.
They're sweet. And I like your little ones because they force you as a viewer to really get up close to it. There, you have such a personal little conversation with that. Again, that's very different from what you used to do. But I really love the shadow, the colors. Just they're all working for me. So let's start at the beginning. I'm curious to know, back in your childhood, did you ever have anything that was like an aha moment, anything like an exposure to art that sort of changed you?
That's a tricky question because to me, it was pretty innate. Like I didn't know I made art. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't always aware of it. And it was other people that noticed it. So it was early on. I had a huge box of crayons, and I don't know whether I inherited it from like I always did from my older brother, my middle brother, and paper. I always had to have paper, and I never really thought about it, but it seemed like other people knew I was an artist before I did.
So when did you learn? When did you figure it out that you were going to become an artist?
Again, that's tricky because I was one of those people that I was always doing it. Do you know what I mean?
It was just always, you always had the support. It was always there.
Everybody knew I was going to be an artist except for me.
That's fantastic.
And it became something, I was a late bloomer. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. So I never could take art because fortunately I was very good in other subjects. I was, I got great grades, which was important to me, important to my parents. I don't think they wanted me to be an artist. They wanted me to be a lawyer. And so I never really got a lot of training until I went outside the school system to like Abington Art Center and to Bucks County Community College when I was in high school to prepare a portfolio. And that's when I found out from other professionals and things that, yes, it's good. And I liked it a lot. High school, I hated. And by the time that I got out of it, when I had to decide what I want to do, it basically came down to, I can do a lot of things. I had the grades to do it. And I just thought I would get bored with everything. And I thought that art was endless. Do you know what I mean? That it could never end. Do you know what I mean? You change your interests. It's so varied like that. And also it was pretty rebellious on my part, which I kind of always am. Like it was the thing about me. Do you know what I mean? And there was so much pressure, conform, fit in, do all this stuff. And I was like, no, this is the thing that they don't want me to do. And darn it, I'm going to go with it. So when I went to college, everything was something I was interested in. It was amazing. And I loved it. And I didn't want to stop. And it just,
I think there's a niche there as a revenge artist. I like that.
Again, it's a twisted sense of revenge because it only ends up punishing me.
It's right. So let me talk about the work because I'm dying to ask you a few questions. First off, with your works, do you keep a sketchbook?
I have sketchbooks, but I'm not one of those people that carry it with me everywhere and write in it and do all those things. I tend to do them as projects. And it's very self-indulgent for me. They're not necessarily works for other pieces. They're fun for me. I'll see an image that I want or that I respond to. Whenever I don't understand something, I draw it. That's one of the ways that I try to make sense of things. And so sometimes I have one sketchbook that's primarily horse drawings from life. So they tend to be themes or projects or time periods. And one was a California sketchbook. I took a trip to California and went from Los Angeles all the way up to San Francisco and didn't pack a sketchbook. Because I thought I won't have time, and well, when you're sitting in the hotel room, do you know what I mean? At night, there's nothing to do. So there are certain themes to them. So I go at it sporadically.
Have you ever shown a sketchbook in an exhibit?
No, I don't know how I would do that. Do you know what I mean?
I would love to do that. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, but then people would be leafing through it, or
Oh, you
what?
give them white gloves or something. That's a detail. You can figure that out. So I know that you don't work from photo images. You work
I
from
do.
oh, you do work from
I
photo.
do. Actually,
Okay.
that's one thing I did want to mention about the work. That's something that's changed
Yeah.
too, because of the fact that and it really started again with those paintings, the 4x6s. I knew I wanted natural light on it. Well, the natural light lasts 15 minutes before it's
Okay. That explains
changed.
it. Right.
And unless I'm Monet, with
Uh,
4 canvases set up and I can just keep moving over. Um, so I do use photography, and that's almost like my sketchbook. My cell phone has
okay. Do
tons
you
of images on it.
when you set up your still lifes, and I'm assuming that you spend quite a bit of time
Ah, yeah.
just setting them up, then is it just one photo or do you bracket?
Oh God, no. There's like that's what I was just doing recently, was going through the phone and eliminating things because I take about 40, 50 photographs like for a and it's all the difference of 2 inches, or I
Yeah.
swap this object out.
Right.
And so that's where it is a tool for me because I can quickly manipulate it. Do you know what I mean? And try out different ideas rather than when I was younger, I just had no patience, so I would just launch into something and commit to it for better or for worse, which is like going into a marriage, what I mean? On a whim,
So one of the questions I ask artists is I especially particular painters talking about, have you ever gotten to the point where you will destroy a work or rework it or things like that? But I'm guessing with the amount of pre-work that you do with setting it up and photographing it, choosing it, that there's not, you make commitments. Is that true? Or
Yeah,
do
and
you
and
also do?
that is something that's changed. Like I worked very spontaneously in the past and alla prima largely.
Mhm.
And I love that experience of being in the moment, but I was no longer satisfied with the end result, the end product.
Mhm.
So that's true. I do unstretch things. I do from time to time. I will be so sick of a painting, I put it away and I ignore it for 5 years.
You don't
There's not a
destroy it though,
whole
right?
I
Or
have. Like
you
I
have?
take a
Okay.
canvas off
Sounds rare.
and throw it. Is rare. It is rare. Because that's where I invest my time, is
Mhm.
in a lot of the planning. And then even the drawing that I execute on the canvas, I will still let that sit and then look at it again and maybe make alterations and take more photographs and things, so that
Work it
by
to
the
death.
time the final piece is there, I want it to be, what the
Yeah.
final result is going to please me. That's what I'd like to happen.
So, this next question I love to ask certain artists, and it's sort of open-ended, so you'll please forgive me. Let's talk about color. I want you to tell me what you think about color.
Oh God. Do you want the long story or the short?
Well, just
um,
is it important to you? Do you not care? But do you even think about it, or is it all natural?
no, I love color. Um, I love it. And I remember early on in my education as a painter, the criticism came, your color is dreadful. It's dead. You know what I mean? It's tonal. It's not
Too
color.
understandable.
And again, my revenge, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I came to the conclusion, and I still stand by it. The only way to deal with color or to learn color is to get it out and start playing with it, and don't be timid about it.
Mhm.
So the coloration, although I would say naturalistic of the work I did back when we were in school, was sort of like naturalistic, like a Van Gogh. So maybe like a color illusion.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was Fauvist almost.
Mhm.
Then I began to realize you can never, to get something new, you have to let go of something else. And to capture light, I had to let go of some of the color. I know that sounds weird, but to get luminosity, you have to have the darkness, and to get bright color, you have to have muted color, side by side. So I can tell you that there's no black on my palette to this day.
Yeah, very Delacroix.
Well, I don't understand the point of it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's not a color. I mean, I know it's the presence of all colors, but it saps color out of it. And early on, I learned, especially alla prima painting, going one color on top of another color. It's better to have a black that has color to it, like that's mixed with a green and a violet, or a green and a red, or violet or blue and burnt umber. Then it, and because there will be a color reaction. Do you know what I mean?
Are you still under
something else?
Are you still undercoloring your pictures like you used to, with like a burnt siennas and whatnot, or you change?
Yeah, wow, you've got a great memory. I used to work on a white canvas, and then I started to tone it with like a burnt sienna, like getting a warm honey color. And now I use more means than ever before, because I tell my students all the time, it's not cheating in art if it works. The only cheating you can make is fraud. Like you say, oh, I did this and you didn't. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So they're all just tools. And so in terms of the techniques, I'm more varied now than I think I ever have been. Sometimes I do an oil drawing. To answer your question, I do an oil drawing, which is I put like a charcoal wipeout drawing, a whole tone of burnt sienna, and then I erase out. And that also helps me with the light, because that's a tonal drawing. A lot of the 4x6s are done that way. When it gets larger, you only have a narrow window to work. So I either have to section it off, or I will use a gray canvas that I draw with a brush. I always draw with a brush. And add a dark tone, like a burnt umber, and then a white tone, like a tonal drawing on a gray canvas, a light gray. And then sometimes I work just on white canvas, make a line drawing, and then add shadows like in wash underneath, and begin the painting again. But there's always a drawing.
There's always something
nowadays. Yeah, always a drawing.
So this is a strange question. Do you really ever consider your works to be autobiographical, or are they separate from your life? Are you trying to make something different?
Mostly, I would say different. Mostly, I would say different. There are times like where it's biographical, like when I paint someone I know, like my friend Linda, or when I do a self-portrait, it's hard to say that that is not a personal statement.
But your choice of fruits that you would use, or like little birds or something, they don't necessarily have any deeper meanings that we're missing.
No, they're just objects that I love. So yeah, like the still lives, sometimes there's a theme involved, and it should be kind of clear, hopefully. Other times they're just objects I love and very formal. Like, I have this, I want this color, I want that. Or objects I love. I do love birds. I do love horses. I love animals. I love figures. So even in a still life, I don't know if you've noticed in some of the examples, I will stick a figure painting in the background, or some reference.
I noticed that. I thought that's what makes it lovely. There are layers in there, but I didn't think you were autobiographical in your.
No.
But more of an interest as an artist in color, shape, line.
I'm obsessed with looking. Do you know what I mean? I love that process. That's what I like about light too, because the same object looks totally different, and even a hideous object can look beautiful depending on the lighting. So for me, it's almost like I want to be the color, I want to be the light, I want to. It's that kind of a thing of looking, an obsession with looking and trying to understand it.
Have you ever considered, I know you did printmaking a long time ago.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered turning your current paintings into prints?
You're not the first person who suggested that. And it's not something I know a lot about.
Okay.
And,
All right.
now I have done quite a bit of printmaking. I've done woodcuts.
Yes.
I loved it, enjoyed those. It all comes down for me. Actually, the reason I think I'm so drawn to art is I don't need anything for it. Do you know what I mean? Like people would say, I would go missing, and they'd be like, as a child, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, where is he? You know, where is he?" And they would find me drawing, you know, for hours by myself. So I like that immediacy and the fact that it's something I can do.
Yeah.
When the printmaking comes involved, there becomes more layers and more complications to it, and other people have to make the decisions and processes and things like that. So anything that gets overly complicated in terms of process, I tend to shy away from.
Yeah.
It is something that I do have to consider.
Well, we can talk about that at a
Suggested.
later time, because I think
Sure.
there's definitely people who would love to have your prints. Great price point. We can
The
talk.
funny thing about printmaking is I've shown paintings, and you know, 3 buyers will want the same one painting.
Right.
Do you know?
Right. Well, we can alleviate that. So we'll talk about that. So you're in your studio. You're gonna make something new. You've already done the photographs of the pieces. You have everything lined up. So you're sitting in your studio. You're getting ready to work. Do you have any studio rituals that you need to do in order to get moving?
Always.
All right. What are they?
Well, there's a lot of anxiety before I go
Okay.
into. I have anxiety. Do you know what I mean? It was like I found out when I was 35, and they're like, "Yes, you're diagnosed with anxiety." And my brother tells me, "Oh yeah, you probably had it all your life." He's a doctor. He's like, "You probably had it all your life then."
Yeah.
That explains a lot. When was someone going to tell me? But, you know, when are you going to
On your
tell me?
deathbed, you had anxiety.
Yeah, and now that I know I'm anxious, it's like, it's
Right.
okay. You're just anxious. Do you know what I mean? It's irrational.
So
I stall. I stall before I go into the studio, because I'm like, oh God, should I do it? Should I run? Is it going to be a disaster? I make coffee. Whether I want the coffee or not, I make the coffee, and it'll be on standby in case I need it. I scrape the palette. Yeah, I scrape the palette. Well, nowadays it's decaf. I scrape the palette, all of that ritual. I do listen to music. I select the music. I find what I need to do on the phone. And those little steps are a way of coaxing myself into the studio to get rid of that. I'm sure every artist understands the anxiety of when you look
kind of
at
trick
canvas.
yourself before you know it. You're already painting, so it's
that's exactly it. I trick myself. Well, if I just scrape the palette, I'll be ready to go if I decide the next time that I want to paint, if I chicken out. So it's like dipping your toe in the water. So yeah, and it always involves music and coffee.
Always. Yeah, that you need that distraction. So we have time for just one more question. And speaking of going into the studio, actually, speaking of coming out of the studio, my last question to you is, what does making art do for you?
Wow. I don't know. It's part of my sanity in a way. You know what I mean? It's my time that I can work things out, feel like I achieved something. It's just something that I'm unhappy if I don't do it. I feel guilty when I'm not doing it. And as long as I get to do it, it's very therapeutic for me. I don't know. Why do I do it?
It's a huge question. Sometimes artists, they refuse
I am
to answer.
obsessed with looking, and I would like other people to be able to see what I see.
Okay, that's great. That's wonderful to hear about.
I don't know if that's a good answer, but
it's a great answer, David. So David, unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming by to talk to me today about your work. Big fan, obviously.
No problem. Oh, thank you.
I have 2 pieces, so we'll talk about that.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. I don't know what the second
I
one
posed for you.
Yes, I know. I know.
I want to thank you for coming by today. And I also want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch David and our conversation today. We really appreciate your support. Of course, we'd love it if you would like the video and, of course, subscribe from it. That really helps propel us forward. So we can't thank you enough. David, again, thank you very much. Appreciate
You're welcome.
you.
Thank you.
You have a great day.
You too.